And he said, yeah, we're going to put a series of meetings on, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So I rocked up at his meeting just to help him and support him. And I just couldn't believe what he'd put on the kind of the billboard outside his church, one of these wayside pulpits. He'd put this: crusade meeting. All Muslims welcome. Now listen, if you don't know, the Crusades were when English aristocracy and European aristocracy marched halfway around the world to butcher Muslims. Because we had the idea Jerusalem belonged to England. And so it's as irrelevant. Can you imagine a Muslim saying that? It'd be like saying to the Jews, come to the Holocaust celebration. Not of what it, memorial, celebration. And you see, his intention was good. The fact that he wanted to reach out to Muslims, I'm high-fiving him. I love that kind of ministry. I love edgy ministry. But he didn't understand the context it's in. So that's what we're going to look at today. And we're going to try and help each other get this right, because getting it wrong is not an option. Because getting it wrong will mean we'll have a great message, but we don't know how to communicate it because the world we're communicating it to doesn't exist. So a few years ago, which started this teaching that I'm going to do to you, I went away on holiday, and I always take a couple of books. And I took this book by Mark Sayers, and it's called A Non-Anxious Presence. Mark Sayers is an American pastor and author, and I'd recommend it to you, but it's a heavy-duty read. It's not like, like my book is all, shallow and funny stories and daft things that I've done with a bit of theology. This is like, it's kind of a weighty book. It's not very big. I read it in a day, but it's kind of weighty in what it does. And the premise of his book is this: that the world in which we live and we seek to minister to is suffering an epidemic of anxiety, because the things that we used to have in our world that took anxiety out of society no longer do that. So he talks about education used to soak up anxiety, and now it doesn't. It talked about we had confidence in our police force, and judiciary used to suck up anxiety, and now it doesn't. It talks about the way the National Health Service and all the different big institutions that were in our and are still in our world, how they used to take anxiety out of society, now don't. How politics used to take anxiety and alleviate people's anxiety, corporate anxiety, but now they don't. Even the blinking post office, you can't trust. And it's at an all-time low of institutions being trusted about anything. Last weekend, the Times did a survey of the institutions in the UK that have the least credibility. Top was the government, surprise, surprise. Just followed behind by the church. Least credibility. So we are fishing in a world that's different than Spurgeon fished in. We're fishing in a world different than Billy Graham fished in. We're fishing in the world that we have got, whether we like it or not. And to deny where the world's at and where the thinking of the people in this world are at is not going to help us. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to describe church 1980. And then I'm going to describe church 2025 visually. And tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, so first slide, church 1980. This is kind of general, church 1980. That's your church. All those lovely people, whether it's Anglican, Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever, URC, Presbyterian, we don't care, that's your church. And the church full of people used to have the senior leader, the vicar, the priest, the pastor, whatever it is, and he spoke into the lives of the people, and they listened, and they observed, and, he had a big influence on those people. And occasionally, the senior leader would invite a guest speaker, which was basically his mate, that said the same thing with a different accent. Because you never invited anybody that would say something different than you. So the guest speaker would come, and it was friends of the pastor, and he would say it differently, but generally it would be the same stuff, just rehashed with a different accent from a different part of the country. And that church was working really, really well, but that church doesn't exist anymore. And if you're a pastor in here, a senior leader I'm talking about, you'll really struggle that doesn't exist anymore. Because you are not that anymore. Just put the next one in, if you will, please. That's Church 2025. So, yeah, we've still got a senior leader, hallelujah. He's aged a bit, or she's aged a bit. Maybe a few more grey hairs, maybe a wider girth, who knows what. And he's still inviting his mates from different parts of the country. But the whole congregation are subject to a whole barrage of information, technology, teaching, input. And I've just written a few: YouTube, Instagram, Sky News, internet, education, university, schools, podcasts, Snapchat, media outlets, blogs, TikTok, 24/7 news, Facebook, and there's more. So I want to say, and I do say to every senior leader, if you think you are the loudest voice in people's lives, you are dreaming. That church has gone. Probably forever. And we ain't getting it back. Now, this gets a little bit worse before it gets better. Hallelujah. Or you would have wished you'd gone for a foot-long Lincolnshire hot dog, wouldn't you? But if we don't understand some of this stuff, however will we be able to minister relevantly to this? So that's people. The average person in your church is bombarded with stuff. And where they used to have just the teaching of the church and everybody heard it together, most people believed it. Now people in church just get information from everywhere. You can listen to every preacher anywhere in the world at the click of a button, free. And so our church is subject to so much stuff, which has made ministry harder. Why? Because often when you preach something, they've already decided what they believe because their favorite preacher from America says it differently than you said it. And I've had people come up to me where I've done the offering at church and I've talked about tithing, and they've come up to me and said, "But Pastor, I don't believe in tithing anymore." Why? Because Apostle Billy, whoever from Texas, I've looked at his YouTube channel, and he says it's Old Testament and it's not New Testament.